Hello and welcome to the Summit 2020 by the MacArthur Foundation. The Summit is a platform where pioneers, designers, businesses share their perspectives on a circular economy, an economy that's regenerative by design. So as you can see, design is already in the title. And today we'll speak about circular design in particular. So how can we design products, services and systems for a circular economy? My name is Simon. I'm in the Foundation's design team. And I'm delighted to speak today to Marilu Valente, one of the pioneers who has been involved in this for a couple of years already and who's really at the forefront of circular design. So let's just learn from her directly and speak over the next couple of minutes about what we can learn from her own journey on this topic. So Marilu, welcome. It's really a pleasure to have you here on the summit. And I'm excited to speak to you about your journey about circular design. And maybe just to start with, maybe you can tell us a bit more about how you actually came to the topic of circular design and what you found exciting about it in the first place.
So thank you, Simon. Hello to everyone. I'm also very happy to be here and thanks for inviting me. I am here to give you a short introduction on my experience in circular design and actually to give you a background on my path or my background and how I came to this topic. Actually, I have a background in architecture, and since the beginning of my studies, I was constantly interested in the topic of sustainability, especially so in the architecture area, so how we can design buildings and construct or build buildings that maximize, for instance, natural lighting or ventilation or optimizing the building's energy consumption. And this led me to actually spend some time in the architecture field. So I worked as an architect for 7 years until I realized that what I wanted to do as a designer was to design and develop products at a smaller scale. So how we can redesign or reimagine a product that we use on an everyday context. So, and how we can influence our habits towards more sustainable consumption. And this is how I came to my experience of designing products that are circular, based on my experience in sustainability. And actually, so after my studies, I worked for a big global engineering corporation for Siemens, where we analyzed the life cycle of an urban environment. So,
right.
So how we can reduce the environmental impact from a city, analyzing the life cycle of urban activities. And this also helped me understanding what it means to have a life cycle thinking behind the development.
Yeah, it must be really incredible to measure the life cycle of a whole city, right? Like to get a sense of like how circular or how systemic a city as a whole works. So I can imagine that must have been quite an experience, like coming from that quite complex level and systemic level.
Yes, exactly. So actually, if we think about circular design, it has an intrinsic, so the source of circular design is the analysis of the life cycle of a product or of an object. And actually, this experience in Siemens helped me understanding at a very complex level what it means to analyze a life cycle.
Right.
So that's really gave me the basis of understanding of circular design.
Right, but then you chose to move on and to create your own thing. What was the motivation behind that?
So actually, my experience working in a large corporation was very eye-opening, but also I needed, or I started having this strong feeling to have my voice heard. And in a big corporation, usually you don't have this power of having your voice heard and doing your own or developing your own things inside a big corporation because of hierarchy and procurement and so on. So that's when I realized, okay, I think if I want to do my own things or develop my own products, I need to leave the corporate world behind and start my own thing. And that's when I did that. So I kind of left everything behind and start all over again, developing my own product. First on a freelance basis, and then founding my own company.
Right. And can you tell us a bit more like how it felt in the initial stages of like creating that new thing, being an innovator and starting something fresh?
Sure. So actually my inspiration as a designer comes from how we can develop a product in a circular way. And this is very linked to waste and how do we minimize waste along a product's life cycle. So that was my starting point for developing my own products. And I started by analyzing the waste stream of electronic devices. So that was my starting point. And then I moved on to the plastic waste stream.
Right.
And actually, that's where I started developing the product we are bringing to the market today, which is the Nepenthes bottle.
Yep.
And yeah, so just by analyzing the plastic waste problem and understanding where it comes from or what are the inefficiencies along the life cycle, was the inspiration for developing this particular product we are developing.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because we heard it quite a couple of times speaking to pioneers in this space that the importance of looking at the whole system and like all the different stakeholders involved and also looking beyond what happens with your product after use, right, for example. And I think that's something that I find really inspiring about the Nepenthes bottle. I don't know whether you have one around, otherwise we'll put it on the screen later. You have one around?
Yes,
yeah, you must have it.
So that's our latest prototype or the latest stage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's an interesting thing because I think if I had to reimagine a bottle for the circular economy, I mean, of course, there's like 1,000 ways to do it, right? And that's the beauty of like circular design, I think. But I wouldn't have imagined like a plant. So that to me is like a really interesting thing that maybe you can tell us a bit more about how you arrived at like a new concept with circular thinking as an inspiration.
Mm-hmm. So actually, you are totally right. The Nepenthes is primarily a carnivorous plant, and actually, that I use that as an inspiration for the design of the Nepenthes bottle.
But this
and
one doesn't bite, right? It's not dangerous.
No, doesn't bite. So yeah, I gave it also the same name. And actually, of course, it's starting from the principle that in nature, waste doesn't exist. Everything is reused or reabsorbed. And so that's how it came about. So for me, the inspiration came from looking at the end of life of plastic bottles in this case. So I started by the end, basically. And I realized that actually there are quite a few inefficiencies in the recycling process. That's why recycling centers, they spend a lot of money in sorting because you need to separate all different types of plastic material in this case in order to get a very high value secondary raw material. And so if we look at a normal shampoo bottle, it's made of different types of plastics. You have the lid made of polypropylene and the body of the bottle made of high density polypropylene. And if you want to recycle such a bottle, you need to separate the two components. And that's where I afterwards developed the concept of having a bottle that's made with only one component. Right. So combining the body and the lid of a bottle into one component.
So essentially, of course, like I understand, like in terms of technicalities, and you're like, much deeper into the topic, there must be so many layers. I have been a bit in the plastics, like new plastics economy team, and I've seen how complicated it can be on a technical level, right? So I guess as designers, we also need to understand like the materials, the specifications, and all of that. But in terms of like the maybe the more like initial inspirational spark that you had, you looked at the system, and then you looked at inspirations from like nature in this case, and tried to apply those principles into your initial prototype.
Exactly. So I was looking at the different stakeholders involved around a plastic bottle's life cycle, and as well as looking at nature for inspiration.
Right.
And the two combines led me to develop the product.
Really beautiful. And can you maybe tell us a bit about the journey that happened afterwards? Because it was already a few years ago when we were first in contact about the bottle. I can see it has evolved now. So what were some of the biggest learnings and breakthroughs in your journey?
Yes, sure. So actually, as a designer, sometimes it's hard to figure out how to bring or how to materialize your ideas. And that was maybe the hardest part for me, because, I had, as a designer, I have always thousands of ideas, right? And I guess many designers feel the same. But actually, how to bring your idea into the market, that's a very complex challenge sometimes. Sometimes it also requires some luck. And I guess we have been a bit lucky, but it took quite some time. So actually, when I first designed this product, it was only images that I visualized, I modeled in 3D, and I visualized, and then it was published in this international magazine. And after this publication, I started receiving emails from all over the world asking me, where can we buy this bottle from?
There was a strong response to it, yeah.
Yes, exactly. In a way, you can say the Nepenthes bottle is a media success because it's really sparked a lot of interest. And actually, that's what I think design gives to a product. It gives a value, a symbolic value. So you can really use design as a way to inspire change. And that's why I strongly believe that's the value of design, especially when it comes to development of a physical product.
Yes, that's, I mean, I'm not a designer by training, but this, what you just said now is something that I have discovered as well, joining like this field and seeing a lot of designers at work. It's impressive what a prototype and what an artifact can do in terms of the message that it conveys and the vision it conveys, and also how it's almost like putting a stone into rolling, right? Like you have this initial momentum and it builds, and then you have iterations starting from that initial prototype.
Exactly, and you need to also respond to the market, and especially respond to the user. So you need to listen to the demand, basically, and in a way, and then to further your product. But maybe I can continue on the product development part.
Sure, tell us more.
So after receiving all this the interest from people and companies, I started then developing a prototype. So the first step was developing a 3D printed prototype, and actually that was a small step that helped me, but not enough, because actually what I needed was, the one obstacle along the product development was the initial investment for production.
Right.
So when
to bring it from a one-piece prototype to then make a first batch.
Exactly, and yes, and that's when things were a bit complex. So actually, we So the requests we were receiving were not enough to cover this initial investment cost. And and that was a bit of a problem until we actually found a client who ordered enough units for us to actually start the production. And but that was based on us, or on keeping the initial vision. So it's very, very important to stay true to your initial vision as a product that supports the values that it has. So in this case, minimizing plastic waste and actually shifting from disposable packaging consumption to reusable packaging consumption, because actually this is a reusable bottle. So you dispense the content from the top and then you can refill it from the bottom. And you can also easily clean it and empty it.
That's I think you said really interesting things in there, and I think one of the pieces that you mentioned is this importance of having a strong vision, which I think many designers have by nature because they're very passionate about their designs and their products. But then also to get into conversations with partners that can help you. How did you personally experience that interplay between having a strong vision and an integrity with sticking to your principles, but then at the same time finding practical ways of collaborating with potentially partner that's much bigger than you?
Yeah, that's a very good point, because you don't always find people that have your same vision, and it's really important to actually choose or find the right partners that share your vision. And of course, we went to producers who told us, hey, your product, you will never be able to produce it. It's going to be too expensive. It's not going to work. And so we had to work with that and find other people. And in the end, we found an academic research institute that helped us through the technical details of the product. So for instance, we had to make sure that this part, or the closing mechanism part, was leak proof or leak tight, as well as the bottom. So it was a technical challenge that we couldn't overcome without strong partners. So in our case, we went to a research institute to find support, as well as from the industry side. So and we all worked together. So we collaborated closely in order to bring this product to reality. And without that, it wouldn't have possible.
So to design your circular solution, you needed partners, right? Across the fields, both from industry to academia, and you needed partners who shared the same vision as you, but who could complement your skills as a designer, whether it's like in terms of infrastructure, investments, or technical expertise.
Exactly. So as a designer, you have an overview. So usually a designer has a lot of knowledge at many levels and in many areas, but not specific technical knowledge in specific areas. And that's why you need support from technical or engineering companies or institutions to help you, or to support throughout the development of your product.
Yes, yeah, that makes sense. And I'm just realizing like how time is flying. It's going so quickly. So I really wanted to ask you about what your main recommendations are for designers. So let's say I'm Simon. I'm a designer, but work in a larger organization, and I want to create something myself. Like I want to get started on the circular design journey as an innovator. What would be the main recommendations or the main things you want to tell me on my journey?
So it's circular design has many aspects. So one thing I would recommend is to focus on one specific field of study, because it's really important to have focus in your journey. And I had to learn this. I learned this from my experience, because at the beginning, it's great to have a big vision and to change at a very high level scale. But then you realize that if you want to make things happen, you need to start.
Need to narrow down. You need to focus and find one area where you want to actually really get started and specialize and focus, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Because then you really become an expert in that area, and you can really, stand your ground in that area as a designer. Because of course, you have the star designers who can design any type of products, but I think that's more of at an aesthetic level. So actually, I think the designer that strongly believes in circular economy has a much more technical expertise, or he needs a much stronger technical expertise, because circular economy has a lot of let's say technical and business topic related. So you as a designer, you need to be educated in this topic as well.
Yes.
So it's not just aesthetics or how things look like, but also really understanding what's at the source of the problem or the product that you want to develop.
So that you can really bring something to the table as well, right? Like into conversations with partners, that you really have an area of expertise that you as a designer are particularly strong at. Because in our last conversation, we also spoke about the role of different professions and trades, such as engineers, designers, and business people, and what they can all bring to the table. And that's something I took away from that conversation we had, where you said, like, designers are really good, and you already mentioned it before as well, in terms of expressing that vision and making a physical artifact. I think there's also this link around being very close to users, right? That like kind of almost like an ambassador of the user and this user-centeredness that typically comes with design, and yeah, I think that's an interesting conversation that we often hear. What can designers contribute in the development of new solutions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the closeness to users is key for a product or a successful product, because you need to make or develop something, a product that people will love to use, and I think that's really important if you want to introduce a change. So you need to develop something that people love.
Yeah.
And of course, you need to understand and gather feedback from the user. So for instance, for our product development, we are conducting several qualitative interviews to gather feedback from the users and introducing any type of changes or amendments to the product. So we can get to a stage for the product where people really understand the product and love to use the product.
Yes, it does sound really important, and it's also something that, coming outside into the design world, is something that really like is so apparent to me as a non-designer, like how often designers naturally test and embed feedback rather than going with assumptions or like with a technical mindset only of what is feasible but maybe not usable or loved by the end user. Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing I can also add is that actually, as a designer involved in the circular economy, it's also important to give an educational message to the users or to the consumers. Also, if you want to change our unsustainable habits, it's really important to educate the consumer on what are the challenges, for instance, behind the plastic waste problem, as an example.
Yeah.
And for us, as we are developing this product, we are also developing in parallel an educational platform where we give extra information for the consumer on the plastic waste problem, what causes it, and like the technical inefficiencies during recycling. And these are all data and information that the consumer can learn from and understand better what causes this problem.
So it becomes more of a systemic solution, right, where all the partners together, including the user, participate in a solution that can work in the overall system. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, this
yes.
is a really good note to end with. I think with the systemic perspective. As I mentioned before, when we just started our Skype conversation, I could talk for an hour with you about this topic, but unfortunately we are quite tight with the time budget. So this was a really good start into a perspective of how a pioneer in circular design applies these principles, and like hearing from you was really good. So thank you so much, Marilu, for joining us today for this session.
No problem.
And I'm sure we'll hear more from you in the coming years in the space of circular design. So all the very best on your journey. And
thank you.
Yes, that's already it for this session about pioneers in circular design. Hearing from Marilu herself. There will be other perspectives from other pioneers in the space of designing for a circular economy. So tune in as well to those. One will be with Hannah and another one with Deborah. So you find those sessions as well on the Summit website. And I want to say thank you again for taking the time and joining this conversation. And if you do have any ideas, please join our social media channels and contribute with your own recommendations and feedback. Thank you very much.